Japanese developer Hot B did not have the best track record. While it scored a minor hit with the Black Bass, an early NES fishing game that spawned a long-running series, Hot B is best known these days for Hoshi o Murohito, an absolutely dreadful, bug-filled JRPG that is among the most notorious Famicom kusoge. But even the worst developers can sometimes find redemption, and Over Horizon, a horizontal shmup developed by Hot B and released for the Famicom in 1991, shows that Hot B's ragtag team could occasionally pump out a pretty good game. Over Horizon's primary gimmick is that you can shoot both forwards and backwards, with the B button shooting backwards and the A button shooting forwards. Beyond that, it's a fairly typical shmup for its era. Power-ups are simple. You can have up to 2 options, which can swap between 2 positions by pressing the A and B buttons together. The default positions for the options are either close in by your ship, or spread out for a wider range of attack. You can choose between 3 weapons besides your basic pea shooter: a laser, a homing shot, and a bomb. Each can be powered up further by collecting multiple power-ups of the same type. As with many games of this era, the speed of your ship can also be changed with the select button. Over Horizon also has a unique edit mode that makes it possible for you to modify your loadout. The positions for the options can be selected, but the really cool bit is that the weapons themselves can be edited. You can apply attributes of one weapon to another. For example, you can give the laser some homing attributes to create a hybrid of the 2 weapons. All of this is completely optional, but it opens up a lot of fun possibilities for replayability. The development history of Over Horizon is quite unusual. It began as a collaboration between Hot B and another development company, Pixel. Over Horizon director Yoshinori Satake explains in his 2012 interview with Japanese magazine Shooting Game Side, translated by Shmuplations. Hot B was in talks with a company that had made an RPG with edit capabilities similar to RPG Maker, and they proposed using their engine to make a shooting game. As a result of those talks, they started working on Over Horizon. However, there were talks from them about changing the design, and it ended up becoming just a normal shooting game. The stages they had made were about half completed, and the graphics were very weak, and we decided at Hot B that we needed to fix it up. Satake goes on to explain that Hot B made many fixes and enhancements to Pixel's work, including adding new stages. So it would seem that Hot B did the bulk of the development, but they started from Pixel's prototype. Over Horizon consists of 6 stages, which are all quite varied. The first stage is a jungle filled with pulsating vines, culminating in a battle against a monstrous insect-plant hybrid. The second stage takes place in a mechanical facility with opening and closing gates that require some tricky maneuvers to navigate through. The third stage switches things up again with an icy cavern filled with ice blocks that can be moved with your weapon. The fourth stage is a sand world with some obvious influence from Gradius. The fifth stage is set in an aquatic world with waterfalls that push your ship down and some very narrow corridors. The final stage, by far the longest, recalls R-Type by starting along a massive battleship before a final descent into a hellish biological world. The game is no slouch, but as far as shmups of this era go, it's not too rough a ride. There are unlimited continues, with a continue starting you back at the beginning of the current stage. The difficulty does really kick up in the last 2 stages though, and the final boss is a doozy. Over Horizon is more competently made than many of Hot B's previous games, but it's still a bit behind the curve for a 1991 NES game. Some of the bosses are pretty impressive, but backgrounds on regular enemies can look a bit crude. Slowdown and flicker can also be a problem, especially on stage 4. The soundtrack, however, by a young Masaharu Iwata, is quite good. Over Horizon didn't seem to make much of an impact in Japan, and it didn't even see a US release. However, it did get an unlikely release in Germany through Takara. Both the Japanese and German releases are quite rare these days, and fetch a pretty penny on eBay. While it's far from a lost classic, there's a lot to like about Over Horizon. It has some really creative design for a shmup of its vintage, and it's quite well made despite a few rough edges. It's not a particularly long or substantial game, but it also doesn't overstay its welcome. It's the epitome of a weekend rental. It's a blast for an afternoon or two, even if it doesn't have a lot of staying power. For folks who love finding these kinds of deep cuts in the NES library, it's an easy recommendation.